Diana Strinati Baur is an Italian-American artist, potter, and storyteller, inspired by the world around her: weathered clay, ancient beams, and sun-washed Italian facades. With a family legacy of resilience, she believes in crafting vibrant lives from the simplest materials. After earning a marketing degree from Penn State, Diana's journey took her to Hamburg, Germany, where she embraced new challenges, taught English, and completed a 5-year ceramics apprenticeship. Since opening her first studio in 2000, she has shaped clay and community across Germany and Italy. Her debut novel, True Vines, draws from her experiences in Piemonte, weaving themes of family and love against the backdrop of Piemonte's wine country and the Delaware River Valley. Her second book, Old Walls, New Lives, is a how-to for people wanting to understand the process of buying and restoring homes in Italy. Now residing in Germany's Black Forest, Diana continues to return to Piemonte, where she's restoring homes in Murazzano. Through her art and writing, she celebrates the beauty of transformation. I met Diana around 2009 via Twitter. Over the years, I've referred to her as my creative hero and the person I most want to be when I grow up. We are definitely cut from the same cloth in a lot of ways, and when we meet up, never in person as of yet, it's always a very long, deep, and thought-provoking conversation. The words I'd use to describe Diana, besides creative, which doesn't even begin to scratch the surface, are wise and generous and brave. I can't thank her enough for being on Flying Under the Radar. Do yourself a favor and follow her anywhere and everywhere you can. Her life and her work are inspiring, and her photos are stunning.
Hello, Diana. Welcome to Flying Under the Radar.
Thank you. Hello, Andrea. So happy to be here with you. I am very excited about this.
Yes, me too. It's a long time coming. We've had some scheduling issues, but we're finally making it work. Diana Baur is with us today, and you are my creative hero, first and foremost. I always say that I want to be you when I grow up. You are the epitome of following the creative breadcrumbs, and I try to live that way, especially recently. And I think that you have lived your life like that, and I think it's inspiring, and I think it's wonderful. You have also lived the dream of what I think is probably millions of American women by moving overseas and spending the better part of 30, 35 years in Italy and in Germany. And so I just really want to start out by you talking about how that came about, what you were doing in the States before you went there, and then what you've been doing since you got there, and your creative endeavors, and just an overview of that following of the creative breadcrumbs.
Wow. Yeah. Let me go back a little bit further than before we came to Germany. I was raised in a very sort of traditional Italian Catholic family, and there was not a lot of creativity because my dad was a scientist. So the energy of the family was based around very pragmatic scientific things. And there was very little room in that household for creative energy of the sort that didn't matter, quote unquote, creative things like art and so on. And I was loved as a child. I know I was loved, but I really wasn't seen. So it was a difficult thing. I went to business school, which looking back on it is kind of like, really? I did that? Yeah, I did it. And actually, part of me is very glad that I did it because that has served me in many ways through all of these years, having a pragmatic and quantitative view of things on one side. But my life changed when my sister, after I graduated from college and I was working, sent me an ad for a company that was coming to the United States and was looking for entry-level managers. And that company was a Swedish company called IKEA. And they were opening their first store in Philadelphia. And they were looking for managers for this new store. So I got a job interview. I got the job. And the first thing that they did was they said, you don't know IKEA, but it's really, 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 really big. We're going to send you to Vancouver, British Columbia for 2 months to train and understand what IKEA is about. And I was like, wow, that's great. That's wonderful. Went home, immediately got out my atlas and tried to find where British Columbia was. I had no clue. But that was sort of the thing that opened my eyes. IKEA was my first foray into creativity and being able to combine creativity with profession. And I never went back from there. I met my husband at IKEA, and from there we moved to the West Coast. I worked for an interior design company became a purchasing manager, and then I went into sales of interior design products. And then I went to work for a construction and design company and became the director of marketing for that company. And then I got headhunted back to the East Coast for another sales job as a regional manager for beautiful custom-made carpets. And all of that was sort of like a pile-on of different jobs and different experiences that combined my business background with this desire for creativity that I wasn't even sure what I was going to do with at that time. I really didn't know. When we got back to the East Coast, my husband got a job working for Staples. And it wasn't long before they offered him a chance to come to Germany because they were buying a German company and they needed somebody from the American organization to integrate it into the fold, so to say. And he was like, yeah, we can go to Germany. I was pretty burnt out at this point. My career had climbed a lot and I was working a lot and I was tired. I didn't really even understand how tired I was, but I was really tired. We had moved coast to coast twice by this time. And I was like, sure, I'll go to Germany. Sure, of course, no problem. I'll go to Germany. I was 36. So we went to Germany. We moved to Hamburg, which is in the north, and things fell apart relatively quickly.
Well, Germany.
Yeah, sure. Misha was already in Germany working, so I was stayed with my parents after all of our stuff had gotten shipped abroad. I had taken a little black book and I was sitting on the Delaware River where my parents live in Pennsylvania, and I wrote, I don't know what's coming at me, but I'm going to face it with an open mind and an open heart. And I look back at that and I'm like, oh, you had no freaking clue. Really, absolutely. Nothing was in that head of yours, girl. It takes a little bit of naivete, and it takes also a little bit of thinking you can conquer the world, I guess, to just be audacious enough to go ahead and do it.
Right.
But what I didn't realize when I got to Germany was that I had wrapped my entire self-esteem up in what I did. I was good at what I did. It was killing me. It was burning me out completely. I wasn't motivated by money, so sales wasn't a really good career choice for me. I didn't feel good all the time when I was working, but I was good at it. And I was able to push forward and keep going. And then when I got to Germany, it just came to a complete stop. I didn't have the language skills. I didn't have any skills that were applicable there. Everything that I knew didn't really exist in that same form in the German culture, that type of commercial interior design. I was doing restaurants and hotels and convention centers and airports. That's the kind of work that I was involved in that didn't exist as such in Germany. And I didn't have the language skills anyway, so who was kidding who? I couldn't even buy chicken legs. So it all came to the point where I was there probably about a year and the whole thing came crumbling down on me. Like I found myself in the corner of the shower in a fetal position, crying my eyes out every morning. My husband was just trying to keep everything afloat because he was always in the air somewhere between Boston and Hamburg and trying to make everything work for this big career opportunity that he had. And I was left there going, oh God, what am I going to do?
I don't think we've mentioned this up to this point. Your husband is from Germany. Yes. So he's in his homeland and you're not.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. He's in his homeland. He's got the language skills, but he's not there.
Right.
And I'm by myself going to language school, trying to be able to order a beer in German. Those early days were really awful. And also Hamburg is a beautiful city. It's not a city that many people in America know a lot about. When we think of Germans as American, we think like Munich and Oktoberfest. Well, Hamburg has nothing in common with that. Hamburg has more in common with the Scandinavian countries. The weather is very, very gray. They get a lot of rain. And people are cool and distant. And I'm not only American, but I'm Italian American. Like I need connection. Connection's super important to me. And it was almost impossible for me to find that in Hamburg, especially in those first few years when I didn't understand the culture. People didn't understand me and I didn't understand them. It was very hard. Eventually, it all broke down and I started writing and journaling, and I had a couple of friendships that I developed and literally tried to put one foot in front of the other after a couple of years and come out of this funk that I was in. And one of my girlfriends, a Turkish woman who is a doll, I met her at language school, and together we spoke 300 words of German and nothing else because she didn't speak English. And she asked me if I wanted to take a ceramics course. And I was like, yeah, I'll go with all the housewives and paint some pretty flowers onto ceramics. Well, what she didn't know and what I didn't know is that she had found one of the few remaining master's private ceramic schools in Germany. And we went in there like, we don't talk much German, but we like to play with clay. That started a 5-year apprenticeship for me of learning at a professional level how to make ceramics. And became the grounding core of my life in Hamburg. It became such an important place for me. I like to use the word vessel. It was like a vessel for me. It was safe. They didn't always understand me, but they always tried. I had to learn really good German because nobody was speaking English there. And I had to do chemistry in German, and I had to learn all of the vocabulary that was very detailed for ceramics. To this day, when I talk about ceramics, I often default to German because that's the language I learned ceramics in. I didn't have the vocabulary in English before I went to ceramics school in Germany. So that's when I started to become really grounded, when I was able to have something of my own. I was teaching English and I was doing ceramics. I opened my own studio. And during this time, Misha was building his career. He was excelling, and he was getting really burnt out. Because at that level, at that corporate American vice president level, doesn't matter if you're in Germany, you're still in corporate America, really. We started talking about what life would look like if he wasn't doing that anymore. And we decided to think about that. We went on vacation to Italy. That was the first time I had ever been to Italy. You know, it was kind of strange because here I was, Italian American. All 4 of my grandparents spoke Italian. I had never been. And we went. And from the minute we touched down, it was like the ground was vibrating for me. I can recall that flight. We flew into Florence. I was looking at the roofs going, the roofs are so beautiful. If the roofs are beautiful, oh my God, what am I going to find? We did a couple of things on that vacation. It was a terrible weather vacation. It rained almost every day. On the last day, it cleared up. We were close to the shore. We were staying near the beach in a town called Massa Carrera, which is where Carrera marble comes from. And it was just south of an area called the Cinque Terre. And we looked north that morning and we said, oh, the sun looks like it's coming out. So we just got in the car and we started to drive towards the Cinque Terre. And we got into the Cinque Terre, which are 5 villages that are located on the coastline. They dot the coastline in Liguria, which is a state in Italy. And we ended up in this one village called Rio Maggiore. And we sat in a cafe outside looking at the water. And this cat came up and sat on the road next to us. This little tiny road was about this wide. Cat sat on the road, cleaning itself. From the other direction, a police car comes, like a little Cinquecento, one of those little tiny beep-boop-beep-bop cars comes up, 2 cops in it. They get out. They go inside the cafe. They buy coffee and a prosciutto sandwich. They come out, sit down, and the guy takes the prosciutto out of the sandwich and goes over and feeds it to the cat. This memory is so etched in my mind and in my husband's mind. And he looked at me, he says, what are we, completely stupid? What the hell are we doing? Look at this. The cat's living better than we are. The cat's living better than we are. That was this thunder moment. What are we going to do here?
Right.
And that moment sort of sat with us. And it was like, should we move to Italy? Like, should we do that? We had been there 5 freaking days. Should we move to Italy? Well, it took from that moment, that was in 1997. It took from then until 2003. But it came the time when Misha really did have to get out. A couple of his buddies had strokes or heart attacks. We were looking at everybody sort of like, what are we doing? This is crazy. The corporate pressure is insane. It's from quarter to quarter. It's all about the stock price. And in my mind, I was thinking, we could move to Italy. I could open a pottery studio. We could do this. We could do that. It would be wonderful. It'd be fun. I mean, we don't have that much money, but we'll figure it out. And so that was the euphoric phase. And I had Frances May's book, Under the Tuscan Sun, underneath my pillow. It was just that time of dreaming and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. And the thing is, when you start thinking about something so much and you start putting pieces of it together for yourself, and how could it look and how could it be? And you start really digging in. Those are the breadcrumbs that you end up following. And you come to a point where you either say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to stay in our nice apartment in Hamburg, Germany, and we're going to live this nice life. Or Misha had that arranged in his contract that he could go back to the United States if he didn't want to stay in Germany. We could have come back to the States. And neither of us really wanted to do that. I could get back into the corporate race myself. I could go back into the interior design industry. I could forget all about pottery. It just didn't seem like the ultimate or good option for us. So as luck would have it, Misha got headhunted by another company. And so he was hired to run Germany and Switzerland and Holland. It was a big job. And it didn't work out. It exploded really quickly. And so we were like, I guess what's going to be the plan B? I guess we're going to do the Italian thing. We started seriously looking at property, and we found a property, and we bought a property. And it was literally a pile of stones of old buildings that we said, okay, we could do this. We can restore property. Neither of us had done a lick of restoration in our lives, and neither of us spoke Italian, and neither of us understood the Italian building process, but we can do this. Of course we can. Heck, sure. The thing is, the only reason we could really do it is because we had each other and we were on the same page with that. The day that we bought the property in Italy, I stopped eating for 3 weeks and I fell into what was a state of extreme contracted fear and anxiety and was hospitalized. I've fallen into this state 3 times in my life. And this was the first time. So it was the most scary of all the times that it happened because I didn't have any reference point for it. Mm-hmm. It all harked back to coming from a family where financial security and the fear of scarcity, our entire existence as kids. We lost our house when I was 6 years old to fire, and my parents lost everything. And I think if I'm going to go right back to where the source of this was, there was this sense in my family of you collect your nuts like squirrels and you hold on to them and you don't let go. And I think that was what was coming to roost. I had taken so many risks in my life and I had put everything on the table so many times that my psyche could no longer handle the amount of risks that I was taking on.
You bought a ruin, right? In fairness, when you say a pile of stones, that's really literally what it was, right?
That's right.
Yes. So, I mean, this is a big deal. So in fairness to you, I think maybe anybody might have a little panic attack about the fact that they just bought a ruin in Italy and don't speak the language and don't know what the hell they're themselves into.
Right. And it all seemed so romantic before I did it, you know. Yeah. But Misha was really strong. And he sort of was strong enough for the two of us through that, which was really my saving grace, that I had him to bridge me through that period in time until the first part of the renovation was done. Then we sold our house. There were 3 buildings on the property. We sold our place in Germany, and then we moved down into that first renovated house. And I remember saying to myself, okay, this might kill you, but literally until it does, you got to try to make it work. Like, you don't have a choice now. This is it. This is what you wanted. So
yeah,
that was literally the attitude that I was coming at it from.
I think a lot of times, especially for creative people, I think that when we get boxed into a corner where everything becomes what we have to do, it becomes very scary, very hard to deal with. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's the case?
That's an interesting question. I'm not really sure. I think that for me at that point, it was actually good that I had no choices because it forced me to face what I had decided upon. I had to do it. But yes, thinking about it now, I mean, obviously we could have sold it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe for a loss, but we could have sold it, right?
Right.
So I wasn't choiceless, but I felt like I was choiceless. I felt like I had committed to this. And to be honest, for me, as a creative person, creativity requires some stick-to-itiveness. Having to shake that property together and make it produce an income for us was something that built character in me. And I wasn't so focused in that point in being creative as I was in survival. That's where I was coming from with it. And it wasn't easy. It was very hard for me. It was extremely hard. I struggled a lot during the bed and breakfast years, but I find that they were incredibly important for me. Also in terms of my personal development. I thought it was going to be the creative, fantastic pottery studio and yoga by the pool and all of that. And what it was one freaking hell of a lot of work. It was renovating, it was building, it was entertaining guests and making sure that they got what they need. And it was making breakfast and it was getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And it was row after row of hard work.
Yeah.
But literally we use our wits and neither of us were good at any of this stuff. Literally none of it. Like my husband, God bless him, I adore him, but he is not a handy guy. I mean, he ended up being the guy that would cut enough wood to get us through an entire winter. We had lessons to learn. We had big lessons. We had personal development lessons to learn in that experience. And we put ourselves in a position where there was no getting around it. We were going to learn those lessons. Okay, we had 2 rooms when the first guests arrived.
Now you're hosting guests and continuing to renovate.
Right. So it was guests are there, no renovation. Guests are not there, renovation. And that stayed that way until we sold the property. There was still things that needed to be done when we sold the property. Something happened in the middle of all that was kind of crazy and kind of cool. Was in 2006, the Winter Olympics were in Torino, our next big city from where we lived. We were booked for the Olympics because we had friends that had a son that had qualified for ice skating for the U.S. team. So they couldn't get hotel rooms because he was one of the last to qualify. So they found us through mutual friends and booked us out. So we needed to go to Torino because we were going to be driving them in and driving them back every day. We were providing them with that service. So we needed to figure out where things were, where the venues were, all of that kind of stuff. And I realized that the NBC booth was in the middle of one of the big piazzas, Piazza San Carlo. And I went over and I talked to the guard and I'm like, so what's going to happen here? He's like, well, today's show starts at 1 o'clock, which is 7 o'clock morning time. And then it runs 2 hours. So I was like, Misha, we should get a sign. Maybe Al Roker's going to be there. Who knows? And so we went up for the first day before the opening and the whole piazza was filled with people. We're like, oh my God, it's full. We're never going to get to the front. Well, it had turned out that Andrea Bocelli was practicing for his stint on the Today Show. So, of course, it was full of Italians. But as soon as he went inside, all the Italians dispersed. And there was nobody except for us and another couple with a sign. And the sign that we had made, to be fair, was on a piece of moving box cardboard with a magic marker that said, Baur B&B welcomes the Today Show to Torino, and then BaurBnB.com at the bottom. So we end up being in the front row, and I see Al Roker down the block a little bit coming towards us, and I'm like, oh my God, we might actually get on. And so I said to him, hey, Al, how you doing? He's like, I'm doing good. How are you? And I'm like, I'm doing okay. He says, yeah, I just flew in this morning. I'm still feeling a little groggy. They counted back from 10 to 1, and he puts the mic in my face and goes, so who are you? Where are you from? And I'm like, my name is Diana, but we live here, and we have a B&B. And so Misha's taking the sign, the B&B sign, and he's like putting it directly in front of the monitor. He knocks over some little Italian lady who's like, hey, and he's like, hey, come on. This is like this is business here. And so I said to Al, you should come down and visit us at our B&B. He says, oh, you got wine down there? I said, yeah. He goes, maybe I will. And then he went on to the next person. So Misha and I walk away, put our little cardboard sign in the garbage, and we're like, I wonder if anybody actually saw that. We get back home that evening, and the server for our email was almost at capacity. We had received over 20,000 emails by the time we got home. So we got the entire 2006 season booked from that one stint with the Today Show. And it was a turning point for us because it was like, we got this. I mean, we're smart people. We're not stupid. We weren't born yesterday just because we don't know what we're doing up here on this hill with all of these rocks. We still have the smarts somewhere in there that we learned through all those other things that we did.
That's awesome. I love that story. So you ran the Airbnb until...
It wasn't an Airbnb. It was a B&B. We gave it up right around the time that Airbnb came in. We ran it until 2014, and then we sold it and we moved back to Germany. People ask us why, and the reason is because we needed a little bit of rest and relaxation after those very tumultuous years. Yeah. And coming back to Germany was a little bit like coming back home. We ended up here in the south of Germany in the Black Forest, and it's been amazing. It's been beautiful. We're 7 hours away from the place we like to be in Italy. My husband decided in his retirement to become a sommelier, and we opened a small wine business where we imported Piemontese wine into Germany, Piedmont being the region that we lived in Italy. And it was a very enjoyable experience. And interestingly enough, when I got here and I had a little bit of time, I had a bunch of connections in Italy with restaurants and wineries that wanted pottery. And I started getting orders. And every time I would drive down for a visit, my car would be full to the brim with ceramics for projects down there. So we've been really busy here, but busy in a way that's been not pulling our hair out busy, not challenging us on every single front busy. It's been a nice 10 years. But Misha and I have a 10-year cycle. And we're coming to that end of that 10-year cycle now. And so a couple of houses flirted with us in Italy, and we flirted back, and we ended up buying them, a couple of real fixer-uppers. And so here we go again. We're going back to Italy, and one of the houses is going to be a holiday home and guest house for friends, and the other is going to be a house for us.
Between, there's the tiny house, which you still own.
Yes, it's a 50 square meter house, this big, really small. So there is really nothing that I haven't experienced in terms of renovation. And this house that we live in here in Germany is 200 years old. It had a huge barn, and we renovated the barn and turned it into a kitchen and dining room. So we just love the process of making old properties sing again, giving them new lives. We don't have children, so this is kind of like where we're leaving our mark in the world. Just taking properties that are beautiful and that have souls and that have history and making them better, making them beautiful, making them livable, making them something that people want to spend time in, where families can live, where children can be born again. That means something to us. And we share that passion. We're old to be doing this. I'm going to be 68 in a couple of weeks. I can't believe it. We're well beyond retirement age, but we still have the physical strength to be able to do it. And we have the experience now. It's not nearly as scary for us as it was back in 2003.
I think we should all strive to be the 68-year-old that you are. So you are renovating another property in Italy now with 2 houses. And you also wrote a book about Italian renovation.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about it.
I wrote a book because people like me who go into these projects naively and without an idea of actually what's going on often stumble and make a lot of mistakes that aren't necessary. And mistakes in Italy are expensive. I mean, mistakes in construction anywhere are expensive. You know this better than anybody. It's an expensive game. So I decided to write a book and take all of my experience and say, this is the way you do it. These are the rules. This is the playing field. And take the mystery out of the process. I mean, there's so much online today, and everything is so romanticized, like moving to Europe and moving to Italy. And the idea of moving to Italy is very romantic, but the reality of renovating a property is anything but. It's not a romantic process. It's a hardcore process. And it's really good if you have the basics covered and you know what you need to do from a legal standpoint, from a structural standpoint, all of the things. And that's why I wrote the book, because I wanted to take this knowledge and share it with people coming over now, because there's so many people, like you said at the beginning of this, there are so many people that want to come to Europe now from the United States. I want to make it a little bit easier for some of them.
We were talking a little bit before we started recording about your process now and the project manager and his wife and the difference between relationship and the relationship you had the first time around.
The mason is the main building guy in Italy. He's like the one that runs the whole show. We found a mason that has an American wife, and she lived in San Diego when we were living in Newport Beach, and we speak the same language, not only English, but also we just speak the same language with each other. Before she lived in Italy, she lived in Germany. She speaks German too. So I'm covered with her. I mean, she's so great. That makes the process not just easier, but fun for me, because even when it gets challenging, she and I can have a good laugh over it. And damn, occasionally, I really do need that. I am American.
Creatively, right now, you're working on this renovation and you've written a book and you're continuing to make ceramic.
I've got so many freaking ceramic orders right now, too. It's like also when it rains, it pours. I live for moments like that. I like to be busy. It might be a little bit unhealthy sometimes that I like to stay so busy. But I'm good at being busy.
Yeah. I'm healthier when I'm busy. I'm not eating junk and consuming junk and too much time on my hands. I get a little wiggy.
Yeah, I'm not good with a lot of time on my hands either. I want to just go back for a second to the point we were talking about before about creativity and how if we're limited, sometimes that's not good for us. I was forced to do the work in Italy, and it was painful, but I wouldn't have learned any of that. I tell people this all the time. If you want the good stuff to come, you have to do the work. There's no way around it.
Yeah, we talk about creativity versus work. That's not the way it is. There's still so much work. It's just that when you're doing something that's meaningful to you and that feels creative, there's a different energy to it when you're doing it. I go back to that thing with limitations, and there's two sides to that coin. Sometimes when you feel limited or confined, it can stifle you creatively. But having limitations can also be huge.
You're forced to funnel it through that channel. If you're willing to take it on and not see it as an unsurmountable hurdle, instead, if you see it as the tiny crack in the wall and you say, okay, if that's all I got to work with, that's what I'm going to work with. That can break through huge limitations in your own psyche and in your own way of looking at things. I am of the opinion that most people stop themselves from being creative without ever knowing if having done the work would have made them happier. They stop beforehand because of the fear and because of the thought that they don't have what it takes, or the fear it's going to change everything so much that I might lose everything. They stop themselves before they take the risk.
Yep.
And if you can just, even within a limited scope, just push through.
Yeah. The 30-day experiments, I feel like, are such, to me, they were groundbreaking because it's just 30 days. It's just try something for 30 days. And it's just an experiment. It doesn't have to lead to anything. Just do it. You don't have to tell anybody you're doing it. You just do it. And those have been so amazing to me because it just takes all the risk and all the, I got to make this be something. And I think that
I got to make this happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I have to turn it into something, or it has to produce, or it has to be profitable, or it has to become something. Just take an experiment. Just do it. Right. Without calling it a hobby, because I think sometimes when you call something a hobby.
Hang on. If I hear that word, I immediately break out in a rap. I hate the word hobby. I hate it because everything that we don't do to support our life's income is then sort of relegated to the world of hobby land. And I want to take that word and I want to eliminate it from the English and the German vocabularies because it takes something that's so special and so important and it makes it so small.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm on my soapbox about this all the time, about creativity and about how important it is and how it gives you back your agency. It feels like you have some control and some say-so in your life because you start to create, and it makes you remember that you are able to create things. And that is not just about art or crafts or anything else. It's about anything else that you want to create, right?
Anything you want to take on.
Correct. That's the whole point of all of this, highlighting people who have done just that, who haven't become major influencers or become wildly successful, but have lived a life that was meaningful to them. And that's how you do it, by being more creative.
Yeah.
I want to jump into the 5 questions, if that's okay.
Yes.
All right. First question. Who saw you or saw something in you before you could see it in yourself? And what impact did that have on you?
I have to say that I was one of those really, really lucky people who had a friend from when I was 6 or 7. She's 2 years younger than me, so she was 4 or 5 until today, until this very moment, who has accompanied me my entire life. She was my best friend from childhood, and her name's Nancy. I was born in New York, but I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and she was my neighbor. And so we grew up together, basically. We went to different schools. I went to Catholic school. She went to public school. But we stayed together, and we saw each other. We reflected each other in every single thing we did. She stayed. She still lives there in that village, in that town. She has 2 boys. She got married. She stayed there. She worked there. She's still there. I did whatever I did. Right? None of that matters. We come right back to each other in like 2 seconds. I know like a couple of words that'll make her laugh, and she knows a couple of things that'll make me laugh, and we're right back there with our energy together. So she saw me as I really was when nobody else saw me. And I'm incredibly blessed to have had that in my life. Incredibly blessed.
That's awesome. Okay. What did you have to stop believing in order to get where you are?
I had to stop believing that I was damaged. I grew up in a way that I was so different from everybody in my family, that it was sort of assumed that I was kind of a basket case. And I also was an awkward child. I was kind of klutzy, and I wasn't popular in school. I went to Catholic school. Everything was done to keep me from being who I was in a way, but nobody knew that. They didn't know that.
Right.
And I always felt this deep sense of being separate or apart from, and because of that, being damaged. So I had to start believing that there was some part of me that was okay enough to survive all of these crazy moves and all of these crazy decisions that I brought upon myself. And to have a partner like I've got, I mean, there must be something okay with me. That feeling of being okay has really literally had to take root, and it grew very, very slowly. And there were many setbacks. I think my 3 really bad bouts with anxiety and panic, and I was thrown back each of those times into my damage victim mode. Like, I'm just, I'm not capable of doing anything. I'm not good. I'm just not, that hasn't happened in a very long time now to me. And I think that I've found my solution by realizing that everybody's kind of damaged. Everybody's carrying something with them, that hurts a lot. And I just feel like that was what I had to unlearn in myself in order to keep moving forward and putting my work out there. Because I think, as you know this as well as me, if you feel like you're damaged and you're worthless, no matter how good your work is, you're not going to want to put it in front of anybody.
It's like dragging something behind you. I used to equate it to a huge backpack full of weight that you're carrying with you all the time that makes what you're doing that much harder. And that's what it's like. If you have these beliefs about who you are and about being damaged or being screwed up, there's so much weight on everything that you put out there.
Totally.
If you don't get back the constant positive feedback, you're like, oh, well, obviously I suck at this. What I'm doing isn't worth anything.
I think that with our creative work, I've had to learn that if I find it good, that's enough. That anybody else finding it good has nothing to do with me. It's been a very hard lesson. I know from the beginning when I started with pottery and then painting shortly after that, I was creating for other people. I wasn't creating for myself, and none of it was authentic.
Right.
So I had to pull back from that. And now I am only interested in creating things that speak to me. And then if it finds an audience out there, that's fantastic, you know?
You're talking to the girl who just carved a bowl of lemons and a bowl for no other reason than I wanted to do it. And somebody actually reached out to me on social media and said, why? And without pausing and without overthinking it or beating myself up, I didn't think another thing of it, but I just said, or why not? And that moment of responding like that was so huge because I saw the difference in myself. Before I would have been like, oh, she thinks I'm crazy and she thinks that this is ridiculous. And if I want to carve a bowl of lemons, I'll do it out of styrofoam balls and paint them and spend untold hours on doing it. I will do it. And I don't care if you like it or get it or anything else because I'm done with that. It just never served me and it stifled me creatively. I'm done with that.
Yes. I have this client in Italy, this little restaurant, and they only like custom plates and they're very cool and they have very cool ideas. When I go there, I'm in a vibe with them. Like in the moment that we're talking, it's like the room is humming and everything. We're looking at things and I have that connection with them. And I've never had that full connection with anybody before like that. And it's enough for me. And then they add their creative food to those plates and then people can appreciate that or not appreciate that. I am so done with being attached to the outcome of shit. I am just so done with it. It just has nothing more to do with me. It brings up another thought. For me, it was the process of getting through making it. That was the part that involved me.
Yeah. And when you attach all that stuff to the outcome, your process is not the same. No, it sucks the life out of it for you. It just really does. If I don't have that, then I don't have anything.
Amen.
That's what keeps my train on the tracks.
Right.
If I'm not in that space of creating, then I'm nowhere. Okay. What almost stopped you?
Like a million times it's happened to me, and it's always been fear-based. When I was in Philadelphia and my furniture had gotten picked up and we were moving to Hamburg, Germany, and I was sitting there on the floor with the cat. I was picking up my stuff to get to my parents' house. I thought to myself, this is the last time I'm doing a big move. I'm never going to do it again. I just do not have it in me. It's so fucking laughable, right? But it's the truth. That's what I said to myself, like, I'm never going to do it again. There have been times, like big fear-based times when I just didn't think I was going to make it at all. Like, I didn't think I was going to live. The fear was so traumatic and it was so destructive. I didn't see a way through it, but I got through it. Getting through fear has been my biggest accomplishment in life. Because I think I chose this existence that I have because I had so many fears that I had to learn to get over. Mm-hmm. And this is the life that was given to me to be able to do that.
Yeah, sort of like you're living the scariest life that you can for the purpose of getting over your fears.
Yes.
I suspect that maybe you've had these moments where you're like, never mind. I'm just going to go back to having a simple life. I'm just going to go get a job. I'm just going to go back to that. I'll just do what everybody else is doing. Stop wanting for things that you're never going to get.
The problem was that I always put myself in positions where that wasn't an option. That wasn't an option without severe disruption. I used to say at the bed and breakfast, I just want to work at the mall. Like I used to say that all the time. I just want to work at the frickin' mall. Like, just give me Abercrombie and Fitch. I just want to fold sweaters. You know, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to think big anymore. I'm done with thinking. Seriously, yes. But the problem was, yeah, but honey, you're in Italy. You don't get to have the easy choice like a mall anymore. You took that away from yourself, Diana. You got to go through a lot of vineyards before you get to the mall where we were.
So I think I covered this. But what did the day-to-day look like when the dream was still just a dream? This is a funny question to me because everybody looks at your life, especially in this kind of atmosphere, like you're living the dream, right? And nobody ever feels like they're living the dream. I think people like us continue to push and push and push and say, and now we're going to do the next thing. And so, but do you feel like you're living the dream? I guess that's first and foremost. And if so, what the day-to-day look like to get where you are?
I do not feel like I'm living the dream. I have never felt like I lived the dream. I have had copious numbers of people come to my bed and breakfast and say, "You're living my dream." Okay. And my answer has always been a very stoic one because I am quite a stoic when it comes right down to like personality types. My answer is always the same. It is that this is not a dream. This is a choice. And choices always come with positive aspects and negative consequences. So as a result of these choices that I've made, I've experienced positive consequences and negative ones, just like you have with your life. And that is a fact of life for every person living. There is no dream. There are only choices. That's all there are. And we get to make our choices. And if we choose one way, it's going to mean certain consequences. And if we take the other route, it's going to mean different consequences. And that's the end of it. Really, that is literally the end of it.
Right.
My choices have led to certain consequences. And from an outside perspective, that might look like some sort of a movie or something, but it's nothing of the kind. It came with its costs, just like any life.
Yeah. I think that question really is sort of a reality check to say what looks like the dream to other people is not a dream. It's very real and it's very difficult at times. And there are consequences to it and there are costs associated with it. And so I think that question for me is just about shining a light on the reality of the situation. The last one is what pays the bills, what feeds your soul, and are those two the same thing?
We're old. And so we paid into Social Security, thank goodness, and the German pension plan. So we're able to live comfortably on savings and that. And also I make a little bit of extra money with my pottery and my paintings. We live very frugally. We don't have a really fancy lifestyle, even though it might sound that way because we live in two different countries, blah, 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 blah. But it's really a matter of being good money managers. And we spend on what's important to us and we save on all the things that are not important to us. For example, we don't go out to dinner. We cook all our own food. We grow a lot of it too. For me, how we live this way is also part of the creativity thing, to keep the lifestyle as simple and as focused as possible on what's important and keep costs low, because that gives us the freedom to do anything that we really want to do. That's really the fact of the matter for us.
That's awesome. Yeah. Great. What else do you want to share with us? Anything? Anything we left out that you'd want people to know about you and your life and what you're doing now?
I think I've said everything that I can possibly say. I feel incredibly fortunate. I don't feel blessed. I think there are blessings in life, but I don't feel like I'm blessed. I've been fortunate. I've been very lucky. I've had good health. I have a good relationship. I had a stable upbringing. There are things that have been in my life that have been difficult, but I've had a lot of good in my life too. So I feel incredibly fortunate to have been able to make the choices that I've been able to make and to live this incredible life that I've been able to live.
Mm-hmm. Okay. As you know, I ask every guest at the end of each episode to give us one small doable thing that we can do this week in order to start making our lives feel a little bit more like our lives.
get a book, something you can carry in your bag, a little empty notebook. Don't try to do this on your phone. Just make it analog. Every time you have an idea or a thought that is interesting to you, write it down. That's all. Once a week, twice a week, once a day, whatever hits you. And then start to see if there's a pattern in those things over time and use them as your breadcrumbs to trace your curiosity, because all the things that you notice are things you're normally interested in and curious about. Make them real, write them down so that they're not going anywhere. You're going to see it every time you open your book, and follow up on the best of those thoughts and ideas. And you will come to a different place by the end of the year if you do that.
Yeah, it's sort of like that moment that you and Misha had at the restaurant in Italy when you saw the cat, right? That was a big aha moment. And
Right.
noticing that you felt like you weren't living a life that was true to who you are, what you wanted. Like, what are we doing? Just those things that you noticed. I mean, a cop feeding a cat some prosciutto, and the cat is having a better life than you do. Those random thoughts create a pattern. And if you can see that pattern.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Exactly that. If you can follow that little pathway and remain curious. I say this all the time to people. I think more than talent and intelligence and all of the virtues that human beings can have, curiosity's got to be the most important one, because this is the one that's going to actually get you from A to B and help you find who you actually are.
I said in the beginning of the show, the creative breadcrumbs, that you've been so great at following those, but those creative breadcrumbs come from curiosity. It's something you're curious.
Absolutely.
Right.
100%.
Those ideas. You have making note of those ideas and not dismissing them. I think we dismiss so much. We dismiss these things, these little wants, these little desires, these little sparks that come up, and we just dismiss them. And all along, our lives are trying to speak to us, or to try to tell us, trying to open our eyes.
Totally. 100%.
You embody that. I'm eternally grateful for you coming on my podcast. And one day you're going to meet in person, and it's going to be epic.